Hello everyone, welcome to Inspired Choices TV. I am your host, Christine McIver, and I'm so excited to have you here with us today. We have an inspiring guest that I'm very excited to share with you. Inspired Choices TV is all about bringing people together who have chosen to create greater in their lives and who are inspiring others to do the same. My guest today, Joanne Del Core, is an amazing woman who is creating greater in Toronto and across the world. She is someone who is touching areas of the world and people's lives where sometimes it's uncomfortable. And today we are talking about mental illness, and our topic is about turning mental illness around. Joanne, welcome to my show. I'm so happy to have you here. It's so wonderful to have you here, and your willingness to talk about something that's a really uncomfortable subject for a lot of people, and yet you have chosen to dive right into it.
Not out of choice.
Not out of choice. Mm-hmm. Interesting, because I believe everybody creates their lives, so I'm going to challenge you on that.
We're waiting for a debate right now, aren't we?
Joanne and I love to play, and sometimes we don't always agree, which I think actually really feeds into this topic, because we're not all going to agree. And what if we were okay with having a really expansive debate? Mm-hmm. So before we get into the conversation, will you tell everyone a little bit about yourself and what you've been doing in the world, what you've been creating, and kind of like when you started?
Oh, wow, that's a lot. But I'll make it short because we only have 30 minutes, right?
For you, we could go longer.
It's nice to have friends in high places. My name's Joanne Del Core. I'm an emotional intelligence strategist. It's funny to say those words together. It's kind of nifty to say those words together. It's a tongue twister a little bit, isn't it? I work with teachers, schools, children, and daycare centers, anybody that's sort of dealing with children, frontline workers, to help them to create emotionally healthy environments for children. So essentially, it really is emotional health that really reflects mental health. So I've been doing that for many years. I started when I was about 15, didn't really realize I was actually doing that until maybe about, I'm going to say 5 years ago, when it really became very clear to me that mental health is where I look and where I go, and I'm not really aware of it, but I'm in the emotional space all the time, and it has everything to do with the mental space. So I've learned a lot about what the mind influences, what the emotions influence, what the beliefs influence, and all of that kind of interesting stuff that really shapes and forms us and our lives, and especially children.
Right.
So I've been doing that for, I'm going to say, a good handful of years. But for most of my life, I have been in this state of observing emotional health.
Right.
So I'm going to say this is what I'm born to do, and I'm going to own it completely because it's just something I'm always looking at.
So Joanne and I actually met, it was 9 years ago.
Oh my gosh.
We both took our professional coach training from the Coaches Training Institute. Mm-hmm. And I know I've told this story before, but for our viewers, I am going to tell the story again. Joanne walked into a room, and she actually joined our second of 5 classes. And she walked into a room, and she had this presence about her, very strong, very knowing. And at the time, I was like, okay, who does this girl think she is? And it was really interesting because I know that you've said that you were aware of me very quickly in the room as well. And we got together for a conversation probably the second day. We kind
of avoided each other the first day, I think.
Right. We weren't aware of what was being created at all. And when we got together and had our conversation, Joanne she lasered in at me. There was something I said, I don't even remember what I said.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember it so clearly. You lasered right in at me at the words that I was using.
Oh, really?
And you, like you said, it's part of who you be. Mm-hmm. You're very aware of where someone is at. You're very aware that what's ticking. Mm-hmm. Good, bad, indifferent, a contribution, not a contribution.
As are you. This is why I think that we recognized each other.
Right. Mm-hmm. But it was so funny for me when you just lasered in. And I remember sitting there and just laughing. Because I really felt in that moment like I had met my match.
Wow.
Yeah, I never told you that. that before.
That's me before.
And it's interesting because we've done radio together.
Yeah.
We've played together. We've enjoyed each other's company, and now on the TV. But one of the things that I really enjoy about you is when I challenge you or you challenge me, we really do honor each other where we're at. Mm-hmm. And I think for the mental illness conversation, I really do want to take the word illness out. But for mental health, I like that you were saying that. I think if we were really starting to honor and listen and be very present with the other person, expressing whether it's someone that is feeling challenged, whether it's someone that's in the professional field, if we were willing to be very present with that individual and really listen, not from a when can I jump in with my thoughts,
right,
but really be present and be willing to step into their perspective, what could we honestly expand?
And what would it be like if professionals in psychiatry and, in the psychiatric field actually sat with their patients and gave them presence? I know for one, that would be the most impactful experience any patient could have. I know people would be healed by that.
Right. So
I know that.
Joanne, you and I have both known people who have had challenges from a mental state. I don't think that there's anyone out there that hasn't been touched in some way, either personally or someone very close to them.
Yes.
I know that when I had a family member that actually physically broke a bone and I was there to support them, the doctor did not want to share information with me. The doctor was not pleased that I was actually asking questions. My perception was that they felt very challenged. You have been in the role of a caretaker, and what have you observed from the mental health perspective with doctors and professionals?
That's a very loaded question because I'm sort of on the tail end of seeing the system work and seeing it function day to day. I've been in a psychiatric unit to support a family member for the last 3 months, and I have seen everything. I feel like I have been almost patiented there too. And there's so much about what I want to say that I disapprove of, and there's so much that I want to say that I'm appreciative of. But if I look at everything from a very, sort of a bigger perspective, I realize that we have limited resources. We have limited people who can handle this sort of challenge. I don't want to call it an illness because I don't, lots of people will say to me, it is an illness. It's a sort of a biochemical imbalance. And I believe that it becomes that way over time. I don't believe that we're born with it. So there's a lot to say with regards to that. What if, and this is why I work so closely with children, what if we could start implementing some really some really great initiatives and practices, early practices for young children, not just for mindfulness, because mindfulness is just sort of, it's kind of like all the rage these days.
It's kind of getting watered down.
It is. And I believe that what we all need to do is just be a little bit more understand what our defenses are around emotions, period, because that's a huge ball of wax nobody's willing to touch.
Okay, can you give us a couple examples?
Yeah. I've had conversations with social workers and psychiatrists who I've spoken to and have said, this is a really difficult place for me to be as a caregiver.
Okay.
What do I need to do that I'm not doing already? Like, what else can I do? And their response back to me was, I understand it's hard. And they dropped the ball. And so to me, as much as I am a seeker of information, I'm put in a situation that I don't know much about. I would have rathered or would have appreciated some sort of direction. Like I'm in a nomad zone right now. I don't like to be in a nomad zone, but I can navigate through it fairly well. But if I were someone who wasn't trained the way that I'm trained,
right,
I think it would be a hell of a time. I think it would be very difficult for a caregiver to get some sort of support to support.
Right. So you're someone who is in the field of psychology. Let's just call it the field of psychology.
Sure.
with coaching and so on.
Sure.
And you have far more education and training and experience in the field.
I'm going to say practical tools.
Practical tools, but far more than most individuals would have. And yet you're still feeling like you're free falling.
Yes, absolutely. That's such a perfect word.
So is it that one, and of course we can't blanket everyone in these statements, but on a general basis, is it that doctors and nurses don't know how to train us, don't know how to support us, the caretakers, or is it that they're not trained on how to take care of us? That they're looking at it from from purely the what can we do, what medicines can we give?
I'm going to be very logistical about this because this is
Awesome.
what I've learned about my work. It's about training for soft skills.
Okay.
Essentially, that's what it is. And so this is what I do with teachers. I help them to train their soft skill. I help them to build that muscle. How do we support emotions in the classroom? Who knows? Nobody's teaching people how to do that. I am,
Right.
because I know that there's a need for it, and I needed that as a child. So doctors don't necessarily have that training. I don't know who has that training, quite honestly. I'd like to think that I'm tailgating, or not tailgating, but trailblading. That's the word that I was looking for. Trailblading a mission here around building the way to nurture.
Right.
The way to nurture. And a lot of people are uncomfortable in this zone because they don't know what to do when someone's crying. They don't know what to do when someone wants to commit suicide.
Right. So
Those are hard moments for people.
right. So people are, what I found as well in my business and when I'm working with individuals and groups, people honestly are not in touch with or comfortable with their own emotions.
Yes.
They're not willing to get present and vulnerable with themselves. So when we're not willing to get vulnerable with ourselves, it's impossible to truly be comfortable with someone else's vulnerability.
Yeah. You know what I've learned? I'm not sure whether it's about vulnerability per se. I think it's also about understanding the power of emotion, you know, and appreciating that, and then that being the gateway to vulnerability. I think there needs to be education, a little bit of education about, my gosh, we all have emotions.
Right.
And what are they for? What is the point? What separates us from the animal population? I know animals do have emotions, and
Yes.
that's sort of something that everybody kind of talks about, but what if we were to start having a dialogue about how it's essential to be emotional as a human being? It's
Right.
essential to do that.
Well, and the piece of vulnerability that I'm talking about is actually honoring and trusting and knowing that you have your own back no matter what occurs, right? Being willing to be vulnerable is willing to be, and access consciousness, as you know, is one of the modalities that I utilize in my practice. And we talk about being the open wound, and you practice this without maybe using those words, but you are very aware of everything that's going on around you. And that's that vulnerability of being willing to be aware of it all.
Like being a receptor.
Being a receptor. And people that are highly emotional and what people would say have emotional challenges are often people that are very aware and they're picking up what's going on around them. You know, children pick up if there's dynamics going on in the family or at school. They're picking that up, and because they're physiologically experiencing it, they're believing it's theirs.
Right.
And so part of it is letting them know, is that bothering you? Is there something that's going on? Right.
And having those conversations. What do you say? What are the words that you use? What are the questions that you ask? Like, it needs to be narrowed down to some very specific formulaic things, because as people, we need formulas to understand how to do things. Right. That's just how we're built. And that's what I like to create.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah. What you said, formula girl. What you said earlier was if doctors would just be present. And I think that that is something, I mean, definitely a takeaway.
I'm not going to say all doctors, because there are
Absolutely.
a handful of doctors that are wonderful.
Absolutely, absolutely. But if each and every one of us were willing to be a little more present with each other and really stay connected in the moment, I have found when I've been in those places of feeling down, and I've called you even, I don't need you to fix anything.
Right.
But you being present with me and hearing me and listening and being willing to allow me to go wherever I go is so healing.
Yes, it is.
Most of us want to be heard.
And I don't want to step over that, because I've seen people in the psychiatric unit who I've sat with and talked to, some as young as 22 and some as old as 65, who are mentally wounded, but there in their hearts.
Right.
And they can identify whether you're connecting with them or not.
Right.
They know. They know if you're there because your heart is open, and they know if you're there if your heart is closed.
Right.
They won't want to see you if your heart is closed. So good luck, nurses, if your heart is closed. Good luck, security guards that get called because they can't manage hard behavior. Good luck, doctors.
Right.
This is I believe, a tool, a healing tool that we all have access to, but nobody's using it.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we've had the tools to learn how to deal with that and utilize that tool.
Maybe that's why I was born, and that's why you were born, and that's why we met when we met, and that's why we recognized.
And we're done. No. Right. I think that too, I want to give a shout out to the people that are in the fields and the people that are doing all that they can do and more. I actually have a niece who's a nurse, and she's very passionate about this, that we're actually taking money out of the system. Yeah. We're actually laying off nurses. And she has actually spoken to that this is exactly the area that is suffering because of the money that we're pulling out of the programs. Instead of investing in the people, we're pulling out.
That's an age-old discussion. Even if you look at organizations, the last things they invest in are their people.
Right.
So in some ways, I'm glad that they're having this challenge, because it makes room for both you and I to go in and create something new in a very archaic system with two people who have existential anger about systems that don't work.
Right. So what is the one thing, Joanne, that you would love to be able to impact immediately with as many people as possible? What's the one thing?
What's the one thing? Oh my gosh.
I mean, I know there's 1,000, but what's one thing that pops for you immediately that you could lead the charge on?
Children. I want to be the Joan of Arc for children.
Well, you have the hair.
Thanks.
So what does that look like for you?
I want to rewrite curriculum.
Wow. You don't take on little tasks, do you?
Small steps, but big ideas.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it.
Recreate curriculum. Yep.
Recreate curriculum.
And emotional development encased in it, solidified.
And you are already working in some daycares in the local area, mainly in southwestern Ontario.
Yeah.
And
hopefully maybe even in Ottawa by the end of the year. So
fantastic. Yeah. So is this program something that you could fly around the world and implement?
Absolutely.
Excellent. That's fantastic.
Blood, sweat, and tears and heart. That's what it's all about for me, and I've dedicated my whole life for it. So I'm just...
How lucky are the children of the world that you decided to show up?
I'm their mama.
That's fantastic. So if people want to get in touch with you, if they want to see what you're creating in the world, the programs you're offering, where can they get in touch with you?
I just have to say it's really nice to look at you in the eyes when we're doing this, because that's present. It just makes it feel so together, unified. So thank you. Okay, what did you ask me?
She's just so cute. I didn't pay her for that, but I might later. If people want to get in touch with you,
right,
where do they connect with you?
On my website, which is joannedelcore.com, JOANNE, and my last name is Del Core, DELCORE. that's my website, and then you can get all my contact information through my website.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
So before we close, I have 5 questions for you.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
Oh,
And
no.
everyone wants to know.
Getting nervous.
So, don't be nervous. You know me too well. What is your favorite inspirational quote, and how has it influenced you in your life?
Okay, well, there's just a new one. It's a recent one that I heard my dad. My dad's always got these really great, nifty quotes. And he said, "Did you know, Joanne?" I think it was by Keats,
Okay.
I think. And he said, "Did you know, Joanne, that when you're in hot water, you get clean?" Get it?
Yeah.
So every time you're in trouble, it's just like a cleansing experience.
So how is that? How is
So,
that?
like,
model?
don't be afraid to mess up. You know, like,
Cool.
we are part of doing things right, but also not doing things right. So let that be okay. Let that, let failure be your biggest teacher.
So how have you failed? And it's taught you.
I have failed in many ways. I failed in being the person who has been independent. That's been a failure to me.
Because you haven't been receiving. You haven't been willing to receive.
Right. And you would be the person to say that I suck at receiving.
You're getting
right?
better.
I'm
You are
getting
getting better. You are getting
But,
better.
I've been, I think for me, that's been the biggest learning, is letting go of the independent and allowing people to sort of to contribute to my life in the way that they want to, and help and love me.
Yeah.
Because that's something I
Imagine
could do too.
Imagine you receiving.
Right. Imagine.
Okay.
Just like, wow, another world.
A new world. So, Joanne, what inspires you to get out of bed in the morning?
Knowing that there is a potential for someone to say to me, "Now you've made my job easier, and now I know that what I was doing has to change." So I often get testimonials from teachers and from people who are like frontline workers. To me, that brings so much joy to me. That brings so much joy to my heart, because I know that I'm here for the kids. And if we can get people who feel empowered to work with children, these kids are going to be phenomenal generation.
That's wonderful. What has been the most surprising thing that you have chosen in your life?
Surprising thing. Not to marry.
Okay, let's speak to that.
I can't even believe I said that.
I bring out the truth. Barbara Walters here.
And Oprah combination.
There
You
you
make
go.
me cry.
Awesome. So, what is it about? Why does that surprise you so much?
Well, I think because as a little girl, I grew up with, such an appreciation for family. And my family, we like live with each other all the time. And family's just a big deal for me. I stop anything for my family. I do anything for my family. And to know that I chose not to do that for myself, not to create my own deliberate family, is a big surprise to me.
And what's the benefit in that been for you so far?
To dedicate myself to my work.
So do you have a larger family?
I think so. And I think they're called 500 kids. Or more.
So what is your greatest secret to creating the life you have?
The greatest secret, it's not really a secret. I think everybody does it. But I do it, I've done it since I was a little kid. And I have consistently asked for guidance from up above. Yes. Asked for the right words, asked for the right direction, asked for the right, just asked for the path to be shown in front of me.
Right.
And have the courage to say yes to it.
Awesome. Well, we do know, one of the things that I believe very strongly is the universal law, ask and you shall receive, is really true. Mm-hmm. And whether you believe in God or the universe or just energy, I believe very strongly that we are supported and it's just a matter of ask.
Your life is proof of that, and so is mine.
Yeah. How does it get any better?
I'm telling you.
So the last question, what name other than your own would you like to be called by?
Lumina. That's
Okay,
right.
She didn't know any of these questions beforehand. That was fast. Talk to us about
Illumination, Lumina.
You
I
do?
wear white a lot. Yeah, I think that, well, she is, she's a figure for me. I don't know, she appeared to me actually. I know it's going to sound weird for a lot of people to
That's
hear
okay.
people say that, but it's, I really love light. I love love light, and to illuminate even the darkest corner of a room. Did you know I found this out, and this is why I love Lumina, that if you go into a room and it's really dark and you walk in with a candle or you turn on the light, do you know the scientists can't even understand where the darkness goes when the light shows up? That's who I am.
Wow.
Yeah, I eliminate the darkness when I show up.
I believe that. You have in my life. We've had a lot of fun. Thank you so much.
Thank you
being
for
here.
this
This
question.
is awesome.
Thank you for this.
So if this conversation has sparked anything in you, if you're looking for more support in your life, or you know someone that is really desiring more, or they're having a challenge, please feel free to reach out to Joanne or myself. You can connect with me at Christine@inspiredchoices.ca or inspiredchoicesnetwork.com. In the world, when we are all supporting each other and asking for and seeking greater, we can collectively create it. Thank you for tuning in today. Please feel free to tune in next week, where I will have another amazing, inspiring guest. Bye for now.